Hello Mustang fans. If you have an S197 and have a door panel that looks like this, I feel your pain. I've spent a couple of different times trying to get this thing to stay up with using a couple different methods, different glues, and I think I may have finally figured out a way to make this repair last. So I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to take this door panel off the car to do this repair because I think it's much easier and much more effective if you do it that way. You can learn how to do the door trim panel removal using late model restorations online how-to. I'm not going to share that here. They do a much better job than I'm going to be able to do under the conditions in my garage. But once you get the door trim panel off, then you can follow along with the way I do it. I'm not going to guarantee you it's right. I'm not going to guarantee you it's a permanent fix, but it seems to be working on the other side of the car. So now we're going to do this door. First, we're going to talk about the products. 3M makes a product called Super Trim Adhesive, which is, by all accounts, the proper adhesive to use for this job. Now, when I tried to do this repair before and it didn't work, this is the product that I first chose to use because I was trying to use things that are automotive in nature and that are what the adhesive is designed to do. I've successfully done this repair on headliners in the past using this product, but in the case of the door panels, it didn't work. Again, I'm going to tell you later on why I think it didn't. This is the proper product to use, and it's not inexpensive, but to use the right thing, you got to pay the price. However, one of the things I don't like about this product is it's a spray-on. And as we'll see once we get this door off the car, trying to mask off to spray the adhesive onto the door panel, because you have to do both sides of whatever you're trying to glue, is not really easy. So instead of using this, another forum member suggested a different product. This is contact cement, designed for, as it shows in the picture, using on linoleum countertops and that sort of thing. Now, when the repair that I did previously didn't last, using the 3M material, I tried using this. And this adhesive worked much better. It lasted longer, it seemed to adhere better, but it ultimately did fail again. And as I've said, I'll get to the point where I tell you why that was. But this is a brush-on product, and it goes on both sides of whatever you're gluing. It's important to read the directions because there are some quirks to it, temperature being one of them, and drying time before you put the two things together is also very important. So you have to read the label. But this product, I think, is going to have a more durable long-term solution. Simply because it seems to have a much stronger adhesion property. I could be wrong. You might want to use that instead. Your call. I'd like to give one quick note on this removing of the trim panel. You're going to have a lot of trouble with the door handle release cable. And I wanted to show you here how it looks. This is actually the two ears that slide into the door trim panel and then snap into place. You can see these are a little foobarred. They were that way from a previous attempt at doing something with this door before I had the car. But you got to squeeze those two ears together to get this out of the trim panel. It's a ton of fun. Okay, now we have our trim panel off the door, and we'll take a look at this thing and see what the problem is. Most of these times the problem is going to occur in hot weather. You're going to see this thing start to come unglued or delaminate. And the reason for that is this vinyl piece has a foam backing that is then attached to the door trim panel. This makes for a little bit of a soft feel, I guess. I don't know. But Ford's infinite wisdom, they decided to put that foam crap in there. And it's actually the foam that fails. It's not an adhesive. I think the foam itself just breaks down over time, and that's why you lose adhesion. You can see here it's starting to pull away from the door panel, we think, down here. Now, the previous idea to repair these was to rub all this off, clean it up as best you can, scuff the back of this, and spray or brush your adhesive on there. That's why it fails. If you do it that way, it's not going to last, because this material and the backer under this foam apparently don't like each other very much. And what will happen is, when the temperature gets hot, whatever glue you used won't want to stick between this and this backing material here. So what do? Well, I didn't realize this until I watched somebody else's video, but this is removable. This is actually still the same piece of trim as this. There's another layer here that you don't know about. Hold on and I'll show you. Okay, so you got your recalcitrant door trim panel off finally, and now you lay it on your sawhorses or your workbench. And if we look behind here, the reason these things fail is because Ford used a foam product in between the outer piece that you see and the door panel. And what happens is the foam actually fails. It's not necessarily so much an adhesive problem as it is that this foam degrades, and then it starts to separate. As you can see here, it's coming off. Now, it seems to me that most of the guys that try to fix these door trim panels have the idea that you just take this, rub this foam off, come off with your finger, and clean it up as best you can, and then put your adhesive on the two panels and push it back together, and all should be good. But it doesn't work, because for whatever reason, the adhesive doesn't like this piece going against this backer. And so what do? Well, the thing that I didn't realize until I saw it in another YouTube video was that there's actually more to this. And I'll show you here in a second. Okay, so if we get down here along the edge, if you look in there, you'll see that, get a good shot here for you, that you can actually pry up what is more material. And that's the key here, is you got to remove this backing material that's underneath your trim piece and get down to the bare door trim plastic. And this stuff is glued on pretty hefty. We put the phone down and we'll tear some more of this off. Okay, so you've got your outer vinyl piece. This is what we want to save. And then you've got this guy, which you can peel off and you'll find more hard plastic, part of the rest of this door trim panel. This stuff all needs to be taken off, and it can be a little difficult to remove. I use a combination of things: putty knife, pry bar, and I also have this guy, which is a gasket removal tool. That usually works pretty well too. So we're going to remove the rest of that, and I'll show you what I got. Alright, so we got most of it off here. We're still struggling down in here. Now, you might have the brilliant idea to take this piece out, but you can't do that, and I'll tell you why. You think you can take these bolts out and then just squeeze these guys together and it'll come out. It won't, because you have these heat welded, for lack of a better term, we'll call them rivets, that you'd have to destroy to get that piece off. Once you destroy that, there's no way to replicate that in the field. So you'd have loose areas all here, and that's not going to be any good. So you're just going to have to struggle with getting it off from that seam the difficult way, because it really is down in there tight. And I would figure that the one edge that you can't get to is the one edge that's really glued well. Alright, well, this one was a bastard. And you'll see I've got a lot of leftover material stuck down here in the seam. I just ended up having to tear it to get it out because it wasn't going to let go. So what I do now is I usually take a razor blade and just go down here and slice this off. It's tedious and it's time consuming. There really is no other way to do it that I've found. If you find find a good way to get that out of there, leave a note in the comments. Fun times. Okay, so I ran sandpaper over this after I chiseled off as much as I could. You're still going to have some residue here and there because the stuff just sticks too well to get it all off. And you really don't have to worry about that, I don't think, because if it sticks on the door that well now, it's probably not going to come off in the near future anyway. So I scuffed that with sandpaper to try to just rough it up a little bit, clean off the last of the residue. And then I also, as you saw, hopefully, ran sandpaper over the back side of the trim piece. And the reason I do that is to try to get all that remaining foam crap off the piece of vinyl before we apply the glue. There's still going to be some sticky stuff on there. I don't know how you get it off. I didn't do it on my other one, and so far it's been holding up fine. So we're just going to assume the best there. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the tape, because you're going to have to mask around the edges here to keep the glue from getting on it, whether you're spraying or brushing. So you're going to have to tape all these edges. So I tried a couple different things and found some interesting things. Duct tape, which you think would be the most sticky of all, really does not stick to this plastic. This plastic is very oily or something, and duct tape doesn't really adhere. Regular heavy-duty masking tape, even worse, doesn't stick at all. Blue painter's tape, although it doesn't seem to stick really well, I've had the most success with. And because you're going to have to take this and you're going to have to stick it down in here in these grooves and just stick it like that, and it does tend to stick enough that it's going to work. You're going to see it start to peel back as you go around, and you're just going to have to fuss with it and try to get it to stick, but it's still better than these other two choices. I haven't found any other tape that works. If you do, please leave a mention in the comment section. Now, before we apply the glue, a word about adhesives. As I said, I tried the 3M stuff previously. Didn't have success, but that was when I was trying to glue back onto the foam backer pad. It probably would work okay. I don't know what upholstery shops are using. They're probably using that product. We're going to use the contact cement because it's a little easier to manage. I don't have to worry about overspray and that sort of thing. I did some experiments also with hot glue from a hot glue gun. That was laughable. It didn't do anything. And I considered using Gorilla Glue, but in my experience with that and in reading everything about it, Gorilla Glue has a tendency to expand once it starts to dry. And what you don't want is it expanding. If anything, you want it contracting. And that's going to leave you bubbles and bulges and probably oozing and all kinds of other problems. So I don't think Gorilla Glue is a suitable replacement for what we're doing. I'd stay away from that. So I'm going to get the glue, the contact cement, brush it on after I've masked this off, brush it on the back side of the trim panel, and then we'll let it dry for, I think it's about 15 or 20 minutes, it says. And I'm doing this right here in the shop in December. It's actually a very warm day. It's like 55 degrees. Almost 60 actually here in the shop. So I think that'll be good for drying. I probably would recommend that no matter how bad these panels are, you probably shouldn't try this repair in the summertime, because the severe heat, it's just going to affect the drying of this glue. I think the cooler weather is going to make it adhere better. I did the last door panel probably in September or October. I think it was in September. here in Pennsylvania where it's humid, and it's been doing a great job ever since. The other repairs I attempted were during the summer months of like July and August, and you know, they lasted maybe a month or two until they started to peel back. Now, the key thing is to keep it from peeling again. The really important part is to get in the grooves down here, get these edges, get it wrapped. The glue's got to be down in here so that that doesn't want to curl back. And I have a solution to keep that from happening, at least while it's drying. You may even want to do it for appearance's sake. And what I've got to do that, to handle that situation, is this product. This is Upholstery Edging. You'll see this around the seat edges of older cars. This is actually trimmed back. It's longer when you get it out of the package. It has little slits cut in it too so that it's flexible. But I trimmed it back. It took about half this flat edge off compared to what was there. See that on the end. So that it would fit down the groove, because without cutting it back it was too tall. This gets put down in the groove when the trim panel is on, and it'll hold it in place with some degree of difficulty. It's a little fussy to do, like most everything with this job, because down in this area the trim panel kind of want to bunch up. You got to really watch yourself down here, that you don't put the trim panel down and then try to wedge that in, then you wind up with it trying to roll into a bubble. Doesn't work too well. But that's what I use. I put that around the outside perimeter and also around this edge here on the inside where the blue tape is there. And that holds it in place while it dries. And I don't do this in a day. I let this thing sit at least overnight. I actually like to let it sit a couple days so it gets fully cured, and then pull that trim piece out. Now, you can glue that trim piece in as well, and it does make a nice looking bead around the edges, and I'll show you that after I have it in there. But I decided that, well, if it stayed glued in there, that'd be okay, but if it didn't, I was just going to take it out and stick with a stock look. And it didn't stick in the other one. I guess I didn't have any glue down in there. It was only maybe one or two spots. It hung up a little bit. But if you wanted to, you could get glue down in there and adhesive that beading in there, and it does make a nice finished appearance if that's what you're into. So something to consider. I'm not going to recommend one way or the other. It's a matter of personal preference. Okay, so we got the tape on, and you'll see it's not on really well. It doesn't stick. All you're really trying to do here is just keep some of the overspray or the excess you're brushing on from hitting the door panel. If you do get any on here, it seems to be easier to get off once it's dry, so I wouldn't get too excited about a little spot or two. Let it dry and then kind of pick it off with your X-Acto knife or something similar. So we got this laid out. We got this guy laid out. Don't forget to put tape down in here. And we've got this ready to go. Cheap disposable brush. And we'll start application. Okay, you can see I've applied the glue. So I've got a glossy look to it, of course, coming out of the can. And put it on and spread it around. But I mean, leave it a little on the thick side. You don't have to spread it too thin. Be sure to get down in the crevices. And make doubly sure that you get all the way to the edges on the trim panel. Now, we'll pull this tape out before we put the other piece in. Put the trim piece back on. This is what the glue looks like, by the way, in case you haven't seen it. It's kind of a cream color. Let's see. In reading the label, I had not recalled that they want it to be 65 degrees or warmer, so I heated up the garage a little bit more than it was. It was down around 50, got up to around 65. And then the glue has to sit for approximately 20 minutes to do a little bit of curing before you put the two pieces together. So we're going to let that happen, and then we'll come out, we'll apply the trim panel to the door panel, and have the fun part of getting it down in the corners and putting our beading in. So this is with the panel in place, and here we have the beading, which I've just stuck in here to hold it. I'm not using this as a trim, but you can see what it does. It gets down in here and it helps hold the edges of this piece down in so that it doesn't want to curl back up, because the edges are where you're going to lose adhesion first. If you can get those to stick, the battle's pretty much won at that point. Now if you look, you might see that there's some texture showing here. That's going to be those remnants of glue on the underside. Under this lighting you're going to see it a lot more, but in the car it doesn't really show up that much. The other thing is you're going to have to run, these are body shop plastic scrapers. You can use one of these to kind of run any, not really bubbles, but any raised parts of the glue out. That's going to help smooth out the look as well. And this seam down in here was a real bugger. Trying to get this upholstery down in this gap here, because it's very tight, was a little problematic. The trim here around the edges, you'll find that there's certain places that it doesn't go down in the slide completely. So if you're going to use this as a trim, you're going to have to test fit this a couple times. Like right in here, you can see it doesn't go in the whole way. There's something in the channel there that's preventing that from happening. So you'd have to cut the edge away to make that work. But I just pushed this in here just to hold it while it dries. It's just mostly at these corners that it doesn't want to stay. And you got to be cautious down here on these edges here, because you can see here it's trying to bunch up a little bit. What I'll do is I'll pull this out and I'll roll this and use this edge to help push it down into the groove, because it does want to bubble up a little bit here on this narrow area. Does it a little bit in here. This area here, you're not going to get anything to hold this, but it doesn't matter so much because that other piece of trim goes in there to hold it when it's back together, and so I don't think that's much of a concern. It hasn't shown up to be on the other one. But before you do this, get yourself some plastic doodads to help push it down in the groove, to smooth it out. But that's it. The instructions for the glue specify a 15 to 20 minute curing time, and it should be tacky and slightly glossy. I wound up having to put a second coat on because the first coat on the vinyl dried before the door panel did. So I put another coat on there, let it sit another 10-15 minutes. It kind of reactivates the glue, and then installed the trim piece onto the door panel. That should be it. You may find that you have to put down some weights to kind of hold it in spots. If that's the case, like these beadings, sometimes they want to pop out. This one's gone a little bit better than the first one I did, so I'm not having that problem. And curing time on this varies, of course, from temperature and humidity, but the can says you're looking at probably, honestly, a couple of days till it's fully cured. So I'm not going to put this back on the car till it's fully cured. I'm going to let it lay like this, lay flat. I'll probably take it in the house, actually, because it's going to get too cold out here in the garage tonight. And we'll let it cure inside for a couple days, and then I'll install it back on the car. But that's essentially my method of doing this. I think it's a decently effective way. The key is to get that backing off, because that's what's keeping these door trim panels from staying glued once you try to reapply them. We're going to see, of course, over time if this works, but so far, the one I did a couple months ago has held up okay. It did get really hot here for a while. My garage is not cooled, so when it's in the garage, it's actually sometimes hotter than it is outside, and it hasn't started to pull away yet. So hopefully this helps you out, and let me know how you make out with it if you decide to do this method, either with the DAP contact cement or the 3M adhesive, and report back. I'll be interested to see. This is a very frustrating thing with Mustangs. They made a couple different products to try to solve this, but I don't see that any of the other upholstery things are really anything magical. It's all a matter of being able to get your upholstery to adhere to the trim panel. The hard plastic ones that they offered, I don't even know if they still make them, for a while sounded like a good solution, except for the fact that they didn't fit. So they didn't get very good reviews. I think Late Model Restoration sold them for a while, and maybe American Muscle, but they got very bad reviews for fit. So I didn't want to go that route. I like the look of this upholstery. I didn't want to go to a different kind of upholstery. I'm trying to, as ridiculous as it seems, I'm trying to keep the car fairly original. I'm not into trying to make it look different, because I like the way it looks now. So I just wanted to reattach these in a way that was more permanent. Hopefully it'll last another 10, 12 years like it did the first time, but hopefully longer because it doesn't have that dopey foam in there. An interesting side note, I just got a 2019 Ford Fusion as a company car, and it also has door trim panels with a little foam touchy pad upholstery type thing on the door panel that'll probably fail in 10 years. So I don't think Ford Motor Company has learned anything from this escapade. This is a curse that was done on BMWs back in the late 1970s. And I don't know why the manufacturers continue to insist upon making things this way. Just give us a trim panel that's all one piece, like the good old days, and this wouldn't happen. Hopefully that was some help. Leave your comments below. I apologize.